Hey everyone, welcome to More Layers on the last day of April. We're recording this. I'm Seth Mariano.
And I'm Jordan Smith, and I would like to, on behalf of both of us, thank all the people who watched our last episode. It quickly grew to our most popular one to date, and that means a lot.
Yeah, it was like almost 300 clicks.
Yeah, just about somewhere between 250 and 300, which to a lot of people, especially if they've seen many huge name YouTubers, it may not seem like a lot, but to us, it is a lot. So, anybody who watched, thank you.
Mm, yes, thank you. Glad it got so much traffic there, and uh, and we'll see if this pattern continues with this installment today. And we're going to start off by talking about a special mini series coming up on ABC in the coming month premiering on May 10th. ABC is running a four-part miniseries titled The Game Show Show, looking back at the history and highlights of game show television.
Yeah, I know they were saying the first episode, I think it covers mostly the history of quiz shows. Uh some great moments, probably some controversies or scandals. Um yeah, I think that's what the first episode will cover. Episode 2, I think it has to do with when people had the chance to walk away with an intense large sum of money. I don't remember offhand what the other two are, but I know there were four, like you were saying.
But we'll try and dig into them slowly, one by one.
Sure. And for anyone who has heard of it already, I personally, for one, am actually intrigued to see this. Um, Behind the scenes stuff sometimes fascinates me, and this would be no different. So when it comes out in May, I'll definitely at least give it a shot.
Yeah. If you want to read more details about what you can expect from the episodes or how the network is describing them, um, there is a link that I found which I'm going off of, and I'll put it in the episode description when I upload this. But um, so I'm going to kind of dig a little bit into what each episode of this four-part miniseries, right, is planned to cover. The first episode um, kind of looks at, it seems to be more focused on the evolution of the quiz show. And when I think about it, it has seen a pretty dramatic evolution going from simple question and answer format with upbeat sound effects and music to the more dramatic, more strobe and such light-driven shows like, say, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, which I would say arguably kind of took the game show oh, to a whole new identity. Kind of, I think before that came along, um, game shows those were pretty much just simply upbeat and that kind of thing. But then with the technological developments that came around the time Millionaires showed up, it got more theatrical, more dramatic, and it kind of set a new standard for shows that followed it.
You know, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Excuse me. Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Um, it was the first quiz show that I could remember that at least tried to take itself a lot more seriously. Because, like you were saying, many quiz shows up to that point were upbeat. A lot of them were brighter, had a lot more energy behind them. But this one just had two people sitting opposite of each other in chairs. And oftentimes, when the person was thinking about what the answer to the question is, there's like a heartbeat sound effect in the background, which in stuff like, say, horror films is often used to create intensity or to make somebody nervous. So, yeah, it was definitely a lot more serious, a lot more dramatic. But quiz shows in general, I feel like can really be hit or miss. Because some of them I've seen people say generally the questions are too easy, or how could somebody get that wrong? And then there's other shows, sometimes Jeopardy is on the receiving end of this, but people will be like, how could anybody know the answer to that oddly specific question? So I think really it can boil down to the questions they ask and the format in which they do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say, in a way, Millionaire was kind of a product of its era because it came at a time where we started to see the computers and more electronic digital technology becoming more prevalent in our culture and society, and in a way, I feel like that the industry, this was kind of their way of adapting to that and trying to create something that went with it.
Right, right.
And then the series continues, well, with a second episode on May 17th, looking at at high monetary stakes. It seems like seems to be more focused on, I guess, um, higher cash offerings, bigger gambles, and the drama and tension that comes with that, which is certainly probably a big factor in the excitement of the best game shows that are out there or have been out there.
Oh, for sure. Who wants to be a million? I cannot say millionaire today, but the show, again, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, uh, as one might expect from the title, the prize money, if they get all the way to the end, is $1 million. And that is a common number used for a game show. Sometimes it's less, like 100,000 or something like that. But yeah, $1 million is a popular number to use, especially with how rare it can be. But yeah, it's definitely like a tense moment, especially as they get closer and closer to that amount. Because like you don't often see it. I do remember once there was a game show that I kind of liked growing up called One versus 100,
Right.
where oh yeah, so you know of it. For those that don't, it's kind of self-explanatory, but what happens is one person, the contestant, is answering these questions, and at the same time, 100 other people on a wall are answering that same question. If the contestant gets it right, then anyone in that group of 100 that gets it wrong is removed from the game, and then it's one versus however many left at that point. Uh, and one thing I really think they did wrong is kind of spoiling the end of one of the contestants. Because usually the idea is, are they going to win a million? They're really close. Can they really pull it off? But I remember there being an episode that they were advertising where there were two contestants and they just outright said one of them will win $1 million, which already kind of kills some of the excitement because now you know they're going to win. But at least you didn't know which one. The problem was that the person who won was the second person to go. So after this first person already lost, it's like, okay, do we even need to watch the second one now? Because we know what's going to happen. So if you're going to have $1 million on a show like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, One versus 100, Deal or No Deal, if that's even a remote possibility, you don't want to spoil it because a lot of excitement comes in with the possibility, even if they don't end up getting it.
it's kind of like television sports. I mean, like I said before, or probably mentioned before, like what Al Michaels said. I think that sports, by purest nature, can't be predicted. They're like the one totally genuine reality show, the way he put it. Oh, so that's I think that's big part of the excitement in that.
In a way, yeah, I definitely agree. I know there's some people, I would say some sports, like the NFL, for example, can sometimes be rigged by the refs or somebody. I don't know how true or not that is, so I'm not going to comment too much on it. But yeah, they can't 100% predict what's going to happen. Like anytime a team on the football field, excuse me, um, goes up against another team, it's like when you practice against your own team in a scrimmage, like you usually know what the other side is going to do, like the people opposing you, because you're the same team. You plan this out so you can coordinate what will happen if this sort of play takes place against you. But you can only go so far trying to predict what your opponent that you don't practice with all the time is going to do. You can sometimes use footage from previous games to kind of get an idea, but only so much, if at all, could be scripted in something like that.
Yeah, I'll admit there have been some calls, or that I think some officials have missed or made wrong calls on, but I don't know. It is what it is, I guess.
Ultimately, in the end, it's just a game, and yeah, there are people getting paid to be in those games to some capacity. But for us, it's a spectator thing, and it ultimately doesn't affect us. So, whoop de doo.
It's taken then. The third episode seems to be more focused on reality type game shows like, say, Survivor or Dancing with the Stars or whatever, Amazing Race. This
Hmm.
the kind of like go beyond location and pretty much push the boundaries in a way you could say of what the game show genre can do. Because there's more either human interaction or exploration or whatever involved.
Yeah, one of the big differences is that the typical game show, you usually in standing in one spot or in an enclosed, somewhat small space, uh, and you're not interacting with too many people for the most part. Whereas reality shows like Survivor, Amazing Race, Big Brother, uh, whether or not they include prize money, they leave it a lot more open, both figuratively and literally. Like with Survivor, they're put on this random island in the middle of God knows where, and they have to interact solely off of each other. And sometimes their true colors really come out because, for the most part, they could be this nice person, but then suddenly, when they're on this show, their mindset flips and they start acting like a jerk. Um, but it really can put some things into perspective. Some of them may not be 100% legit, but I believe shows like, say, The Amazing Race are, because they're traveling around the world, they're doing all these incredible challenges, learning about all these different cultures. So yeah, reality shows are definitely a much different setup. Sometimes they can yield very similar results, like Survivor. The winner gets $1 million. Amazing Race, same thing. Uh, but the scenario is entirely different, but it's still hopefully kind of brings that adrenaline rush to the audience because they don't know what's going to happen. They don't know who's going to do what. Are we going to like this person? Are we going to hate this person? Was this fair? Was this not? A lot of the same elements are used in both game shows and reality shows, but they just make them just different enough that they stand out.
With shows like those, it's kind of unique in the sense that often the challenges vary from season to season. So a lot of the time they're like obligated to think on their feet. They don't know what to expect. And so you can see, and so they can easily get stressed out or have spinning heads or get confused or freak out or whatever. It's a chance to really see people unmasked. And I was thinking earlier, I think I might have said this in an earlier episode. If you really want to see someone's real colors, or look at their social media page. That may be more or less true, but I think there's at least partial truth to it.
I was about to say, I think it would be true up to a certain point because, yeah, some people are going to be very explicit in detail on what's going on in their life or what they want to say. But not everybody does that. There are some things that they keep hidden or they stay silent about. But there are a lot of cases where somebody's true colors can shine through. Uh, and kind of going off of what you were saying a second ago, reality shows often have to change the rules or change a lot of things about the show because people have seen the show before. And if they keep it exactly the same, then it might become a lot more predictable, or people are going to do a lot of the same things or take advantage of certain rules. So they constantly have to switch it up. Survivor, for example, they constantly have to put in new challenges for each episode. Um, they might throw in new gimmicks, like an island where somebody that almost got eliminated can go and they have a second shot to get back into the game, or something along that line. Whereas a game show, for the most part, stays exactly the same, which can be a double-edged sword depending on the show. Because if it's like a quiz show, the questions can always be different. Uh, if it's something like, say, The Price is Right, that can really depend because it kind of follows a template for the most part. Like they'll have four people bidding on something. Whoever wins gets to play a game. And I think if they win there, they go on to spin the wheel. And then if they land on a certain thing without going over a certain amount, then they go on to the final round. And then if they win there, they win everything. But they switch it up just enough that it doesn't get boring, which is evident with The Price is Right, considering it's been around for a long time.
Yeah, and there are so many different pricing games on that show. They kind of rotate through or something.
Oh yeah, like they'll definitely still bring back fan favorites, or people will be like, "Oh, I remember that one. I love that one," or "I hate that one" in some cases. But they still have enough of them that it doesn't get stale.
Right.
And by the time they might have to add new stuff, more people are growing up and learning about the show, starting to watch it, and they get new audiences.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
And then episode 4, the final one, covers what is arguably the most controversial game show subtopic of all, dating and romance reality shows, or reality competition, like say Bachelor or lesser known ones like Mr. Personality or whatever, Love
Yeah.
Island.
Joe Millionaire was one that my mom watched with me before we moved last summer. We honestly found that one entertaining for whatever reason, but I liked watching it with her. Um, Now I don't know if I necessarily hate the premise of a show like this, but the way a lot of them are executed is what drives me insane. Because, yeah, there is going to be drama. It's covering the situation of falling in love and whatnot. But the problem is, a lot of them, like The Bachelor, Bachelorette, what have you, will have the drama that ensues as a central theme. Like they dwell on that, to me, way too much. Yeah, there's going to be people who are sad or mad or something, but they always make it a point to put emphasis on that. Like even before this upcoming season of The Bachelor started, there have been previews showing several women getting so mad. And the last thing they had one of them say was, if I don't get a rose, I'm burning this house down. It's like if you're gonna give people the platform, if you're gonna put a spotlight on people who say or do things like that, that's the kind of dating show that I do not like.
Yeah. I guess my feelings are kind of mixed. A part of me kind of likes to see that drama, whether I guess whether it's real or fictional, uh, because because it kind of makes me feel better about myself or whatever. But probably shouldn't be into it. But also, on the other hand, I feel like for one thing, I think it would kind of make more sense to just keep all of these candidates, these bachelors or bachelorettes, let's locked up in their own separate rooms for safety.
Yeah, because they definitely show a lot of fights and violent occurrences on shows like that. Um, and I will say this, um, this past winter, like earlier this year, I was almost on a dating show. It wasn't necessarily a dating reality show, but it was, I should say is, because think they're wrapping up filming at this point. But it's more of like a docu-series type of thing, called Love on the Spectrum, which is a show for people who have autism to go on, hopefully find somebody they would fall in love with, whether or not that other person has autism, because they don't necessarily have to. But what was nice rather, was when I was being interviewed for the show, in case I would be selected. One of the things they asked is, do you have a preference as to whether or not the person you meet has autism? And I honestly didn't have a preference, but I still very much appreciated the fact that they would ask that. And then I had watched all the episodes that they had up to that point, both for the US and Australia. And yeah, there is a little bit of drama, but they don't put so much focus on it that it gets frustrating. So I commend them for that at least.
Um, did they ask you a question like, does it matter to you, if the person you're paired with is someone you already know or not?
Well, they didn't ask that, although I feel like the likelihood that they would pick somebody I already know would be relatively small. That being said, I do remember some episodes where somebody on the show would talk to a close friend about the situation they're in, or like their families, or something along that line. It's like, okay, so I met this person today and I want to do this for them. What should I do? So yeah, I don't know if they would pick somebody that they knew unless they somehow figured out that there was a mutual attraction. I haven't seen it yet. Maybe they would at some point, but currently, I'm not sure.
Well, that's kind of like well, why I'd be reluctant, as it were to look into that show because I don't think I'd want to go out in any way, shape, or form with someone I didn't already know or and have a friendship with because I wouldn't know what I was getting into.
Well, the fun part of this is you're not necessarily required to date them. Like, yeah, you kind of are put into a first date scenario, but that doesn't mean you have to keep dating them after that point. If you talk to them and figure out that you just want to be friends, they let that happen. They're not forced to be in a relationship. And it shows their friendship blossoming. And they are one of those shows where at the end they'll be like, between the time of filming this episode and now, this is what's happened and this is where they are at this point. They could be friends, they might not be speaking to each other, whatever the case may be, but they're not required to actually date the person they meet.
Well, that's fair. I just think I just prefer to go out with someone I was friends with personally anyway.
Oh, for sure. And that's more than understandable. I
Yeah.
kind of put my name out there for the show, partly, excuse me, partly to kind of push myself to be out there a little bit more, like not stay so uh enclosed in my shell or to be shy. It's like I want to actually be more social. I want to interact directly with people more and not just people I've known for years. Now, I was not selected and I was kind of expecting that given how many people they were probably talking to. But I feel like it was a good step for me to even give it a shot so that I feel more encouraged to put myself out there a little more and maybe eventually finding somebody.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you tried, right?
Yeah, I gave it a
Yeah,
shot and I have no regrets.
yeah. Well, anyway, moving on. I asked some Facebook friends, did a little kind of another survey question, asked them what their favorite game shows were, and I got a few results. One said Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy, which were back when I was younger. Those were my go-tos. Like I could barely. There was a stretch in my childhood I could barely go one night, right, without catching the new episodes of those two at 7 and 7:30.
Oh yeah, my family would watch them all the time when I was growing up.
Yeah. Yeah. Another one said started their response with "Name That Tune" and "Beat Shazam." Both are currently running on Fox, and I've seen both of them, and they're pretty good. I feel like they're more or less easy music quizzes for me. Not to brag, but
It's perfectly okay. I know you've studied up for shows like Jeopardy, so
yeah, yeah, yes, I did. Take the online Jeopardy test. Haven't heard anything back, but I might sometime by the end of this year. We'll have to wait and see what happens.
yeah. And honestly, even if you don't make it right away, I would encourage you to like keep giving it a shot because I feel like, especially since you're so dedicated, that you would be a good contestant on that show, and I would definitely be rooting for you.
Yeah, thanks.
Of course,
I'm thinking if this doesn't work out, I might have a better shot at something a little easier, like the weakest link or something. Maybe I'll look into that or something.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Same person also said, I used to watch game shows when I was younger on Nickelodeon. And Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? And Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego? The ones I watched when I was younger were also my favorites.
I don't know if I ever saw Where in the World or Where in Time. Uh, but Carmen Sandiego was a character that me and my siblings kind of grew up on because of like computer games or whatever. But yeah, that was kind of a staple character for us growing up. Uh, Trying to think of game shows specifically on Nickelodeon, but because I didn't have that channel growing up, I can't think of any off the top of my head. But
Well, there
I'm
was Slime Time, Brain Surge, Double Dare, Figure It Out.
okay.
Yeah, yeah. So those are a few examples.
Yeah, I would guess that your favorite is Jeopardy, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, right now. Maybe Weakest Link is a pretty close second.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you say you have a favorite?
Wheel of Fortune was always a fun one for me because I always like to see if I could figure the puzzle out before before the contestants did. Uh, Sometimes I would get it fairly quickly, sometimes I wouldn't. Uh, but yeah, because the puzzle's always different, it was kind of like Hangman for me. But yeah, it was fun to do, and I still kind of do that every so often. Maybe not as much. One versus 100, I loved watching, although I don't think they've been on for a while now, which kind of stinks because I like the premise. And there was at least one more. Um, I mean, Deal or No Deal, we watched a bit of. We kind of stopped after a while, but it was fun for the time. But yeah, definitely Wheel of Fortune is probably one of my favorites. Price is Right might put on every so often, but I would probably say Wheel of Fortune is my favorite, at least for now.
All right. Yeah. Kind of switching gears, going to the curious question portion. This time it's this. If you were a celebrity and got to pick your teammates and coach for an NBA All Star celebrity game, what non athlete celebs would you want on your team, and what pro player would you want as your coach?
All right, so I actually had to think about this one for a little bit because, like, I didn't know too many pro players, so I had to do a little bit of research, thinking who would be a good coach. Um, and for me, the pro player that I went with was I don't know how to pronounce his first name. It might be Steven or Stefan. Pretty sure it's Stefan or Stefan, but it's like Stephen Curry.
Right? I know him. Yeah.
Yeah, he's shown to be really good. And any basketball pro player that I have seen in my research, it felt like he had the fewest, if possibly no controversies surrounding him. There probably is, and I just didn't see any. But he's a pro player. He's not one of those players that I've seen have angry outbursts at anybody or treat somebody like dirt. Again, might have missed it. But it's like if he's as good as he is,
Yeah.
at least from what I've seen, because basketball is not my
Yeah.
primary sport when it comes to knowledge of it. Uh, Pro player, uh, he's mostly civil, maybe. And what kind of helped me select him a little bit more, there's a separate show entirely. I guess you could kind of call this a game show, but it's not like a traditional one. It's called Holy Moly.
Right. And he's like a producer on it or something.
Yeah, he's like a producer. He sometimes gives tips.
Yeah.
He kind of just shows up in the background every so often, and look, he has fun with it. So it's like if he's a guy who can have fun, is good at what he does, and from what I've seen has a good attitude, I would like to have him as a coach out of anybody that I researched.
Yeah. And from what I understand, he's also a man of Christian faith, and he's actually been involved in Christian film producing. He was like an executive producer on the movie Breakthrough. So
Now that I hadn't heard, but if that's the case, then I applaud him further,
yeah.
especially if he's been open about it.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it myself, but I'll take your word for it. I'll do my research. But if that's the case, then that kind of makes me want to have him as a coach more.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to players, there's a good handful I thought of, and these are non-athletes specifically. And athlete can be used for many different things, but I tried to think: do they play basketball? Do they play football, hockey, soccer, whatever? And if they don't, then I kind of put them on the list. The first person I thought of was Dwayne Johnson, aka The Rock. And a big reason for that, you know, any interaction I've seen him have with his younger audiences, he seems to be a really nice guy. He's a good father. From what I've seen, I don't know his whole personal life story, but he seems like a fun guy to be around. But I also thought of him because the guy is just a wall of muscle. And I feel like he would be a good defensive player, and it would be very difficult to get the ball past him if he was on defense.
It probably helps that he has actually professional athletic experience. I mean, he had a short football career, and then he had his prolific wrestling career. And
Yeah, that's true. I didn't think about the wrestling thing for some reason.
yeah,
I mean,
that's
I don't.
fine.
Does he really do that anymore, though?
Not that I know of. I think he's from as far as I know, he's more focused on like filmmaking and
Right.
television.
All right. So, in a similar vein, this guy's also a wrestler, but I've also seen him do a lot of acting stuff, and uh, it's John Cena.
Right?
Again, another wall of muscle. Um, and I kind of thought of him because he has this catchphrase where he kind of waves his hand in front of his face and he says, "You can't see me." So maybe he could use that catchphrase and somehow translate it into how he plays basketball. Like he could move in such a way where it'd be hard to keep track of where he is, and he could use that to his advantage. Maybe he would come up from behind someone else, get the other players confused. Um, but I also thought of him because, from what I understand, he holds the record for the most wishes granted in the Make a Wish Foundation. And it's like if he was playing, I don't know if this is what the celebrity game is for, but if he were to play a basketball game for charity, I feel like so many people would love to see that because of the types of stuff he does outside of athletic events.
He just seemed like the kind of guy who would do anything short of outright stupid to help charity.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Um, then the next person I thought of was Chris Evans. I almost jokingly said all of the Chris's in acting, meaning like Chris Evans, Chris Hemsworth, Chris Pine, Chris Pratt. Um, what
The
I
modern
figured,
Chris Club.
yeah, that should be what they're called, especially since all of them have been in some superhero film at some degree, or rather at some point. But I mainly went with Chris Evans because he's played characters multiple times, not even in the same movie universe, that have been part of a team. Like when they had the original run of Fantastic Four with Chris Evans, he was part of the Fantastic Four. He was part of a team. And then, of course, now he's really well known for his continuous portrayal for many years now as Captain America in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And not only is this character part of a team, but he's also a team leader, a strategist. And I feel like if he can take what he does in the films and bring that to real life, like in a basketball team, he could be a good team leader, a good strategist to play in a basketball game. I feel like that would just be a really useful asset because all good teams should have a good team leader, and I feel like Chris Evans would be a good fit for that.
Sure.
And then this kind of may seem a little out there, but I also thought of another actor. Many people might know him for various things. Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah.
Now, I partly thought of him because he kind of seemed like he had that athletic build. He could play basketball, but from what I've seen of him in movies I've watched where he was a character like Detective Pikachu, and I haven't seen the movies, but I've seen brief snippets of him as Deadpool, and he just seems like he has so much fun with whatever he's doing that I feel like he would have a blast playing in a basketball game with a bunch of other celebrities or something along that vein. But I also thought of like how he treats his wife, and I kind of understand if that sounds kind of completely out of left field. Like, how does that have to do with basketball? But I thought of a specific moment that many people have referred to for a while, where his wife was coming down the stairs at an event in this fancy dress, and his mouth was just agape. He was so shocked at how wonderful she looked. And it's like, I feel like that kind of shows as much of a weird character he can portray, he's still genuine. And I feel like people should interact more with genuine people like him. Because, like, he sees her all the time, but he still expresses how much he cares for her. And it's like, if he has that level of genuineness with her, I feel like how he just has fun with what he does and his level of genuineness, those could really help boost the morale of the team.
So you'd say he's a very positive guy.
I would definitely say so, yeah. And you almost never really hear anything bad about him, at least from my experience. So that's an added bonus.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Then the last entry I had, I said all 5 members of Dude Perfect. Now, not everybody may know who Dude Perfect is, but I feel like they should. Dude Perfect is a group primarily found on YouTube. They are most well known for their trick shots, especially with that being how they grew to be as popular as they are now. Um, but they've shown they have plenty of experience with a basketball, even if they don't always necessarily play a traditional game. But they have so much experience in sports, even if it's kind of putting a twist on it all the time. But they have a lot of experience with it, so I feel like that would come in handy. But like with Ryan Reynolds, they have just so much fun with anything they do, really, because they don't just do trick shots now. They do so many other things, but they're always shown to have a blast doing it. They always just have this camaraderie that could also be well translated into a team, since they're already a team of sorts. Um, but a definite highlight is whenever they make a trick shot, they celebrate it. They're screaming excitement, they're jumping around, they're congratulating each other. And just having that on an actual team in an actual game would make it so much more exciting, so much more fun to watch. And like I said with the whole Ryan Reynolds thing, it could boost morale. It could get the team to be excited along with the audience who's watching.
Yeah, so like a contagious enthusiasm and energy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so for my ideas, I thought of for my player coach, I went with someone on, um, a come and gone NBA star who probably isn't that talked about when people look back on the history of the league, but I think is a very worthy one. And his name is Tracy McGrady. He was a seven-time All-Star, and the thing that really got me thinking of him um, was there was one game um, he played in 2004 or, where his team was down by double digits with like less than a minute to go, and he somehow was able to quickly rally back, and pull off a bunch of insane shots, 13 unanswered points, right, to come back just in time to win. And most people in that situation would have probably cracked like a rock, so to speak, and probably felt like that's it, we're done. But this guy stayed in the zone. He kept persevering and got his team the win. So anyone who can when stay in the zone and keep up the energy and keep up the focus like that in crunch time, I feel like he's got to know what he's doing.
Yeah, I would definitely say so. And that's really something I can admire with someone like him. He's got that mentality that I wish a lot more people had of it's not over until it's actually over. Like, yeah, there might be some scenarios in sports or even game shows where it's just not possible to ultimately win. But as this guy shows, if you keep pushing, you might be able to just pull off something that nobody would expect.
Yeah.
And yeah, there are times where it may not be possible to pull off a win at a certain point. But the people who keep giving it their all despite that earn my respect because it shows that they're not going to give up even when the odds are completely stacked against them.
Yeah. And so for my players, I thought of this probably was too easy a one. You could probably laugh at this, all people, but I said Zac Efron, thinking back to High School Musical, where he played a student basketball player, and and they actually said when they were making this movie, they did actual like basketball training sessions. So it wasn't like it was necessarily faked. It was almost like what you saw was what you were getting. So, and I did actually see. I don't know if you saw the interview with Vogue, the 73 questions interview he did, and where he did like an insane, like half court shot into a basketball net on his property from his balcony or something.
Now, I didn't see that, but I definitely want to check that out at some point because that actually sounds kind of cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, you say Zac Efron. Of course, the first thing I did think of was High School Musical. I didn't know that they actually had that kind of training, but looking back, it actually kind of makes sense. Because yes, a lot of the stuff in that movie, particularly the musical numbers, "Get Your Head in the Game" is a popular one. Uh, they still need to know how to handle a basketball. So if he's able to be that choreographed with the ball while working with these other people and doing all these moves, it's like, yeah, if he can handle a basketball that well, he could be a good asset to a team.
I then said Jamie Foxx, pretty much purely based on his a personal real life athletic experience. I know he played football in high school, and so pretty much based on that, I think he might be a good choice.
I mean, yeah, if they have the experience already, why not?
Yeah. And then pretty much for the same reason, I put Will Smith. I think I think he was a student football player himself. So and and at least in the theme sequence, we saw him doing a little hoops in the Fresh Prince. I don't know if they did it beyond that, but I think he might have the athletic talent to do well enough.
Yeah, I didn't see a lot of Fresh Prince, but I mean, I think I do remember some basketball stuff being involved. Um, but yeah, but based on what I know of him, I could definitely see him being in a game like this. Now, it may be difficult now because of the controversy that I won't go into, partly because pretty much everybody knows about it. But yeah, considering most things, I think it could work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I really struggled to come up with ones honestly, but I ended up finally landing on for my last one Toby Mac, the Christian recording artist, one of the founding members of DC Talk, and currently working as a solo performer. He and this is just because, well, uh, part of it because he actually was a student basketball player himself. He won a state championship, and I think also in part because of the smiling, upbeat vibe that he brings when he's interacting with people, like whether he's taken over a Chick-fil-A drive-through or whatever. He seems to have that sort of genuine warmth about him that is almost contagious.
So, like with Ryan Reynolds or Dude Perfect, it's that positive energy that could be really contagious. What ultimately sells it for you.
I think that combined with his experience in school basketball, I think would
Right.
probably be my reasoning there.
Yeah, I am completely on board with that one.
Yeah. 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 Well, that's going to do it for us right now, but well, we should be back soon. In the meantime, tell us about your thoughts on the game show, your favorite game shows, whatever, your picks for your coach and players for the NBA Celebrity Game, and keep up with us on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Facebook, and YouTube, and reach out to us as you wish.
Absolutely. And hey, if you have an idea for a game show that is either rare or hasn't been done before, that's another thing I would love to hear about. But like he was saying, any interaction we have with the audience is something that we cherish. It's something that we enjoy because we love to hear other people's thoughts. We love to have those discussions with them. So if you have any questions or comments at all, please feel more than free to send them our way.
Yeah, please send whatever our way, and thanks again for streaming, and we'll see you next time.
So long, everyone.